again, thank you so much, Annie, for joining me. It's such a pleasure to have you here because honestly, Notes on Heartbreak is a really important book for so many people who are going through a similar process. So thank you
Oh,
first of
wow.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for
And
having me
so,
as well.
of course, and I just wanted to do a brief introduction. So, first of all, Annie Lord is Vogue's dating columnist, so
Mm.
knows all about that area of the world. She also writes for Vice, the Sunday Times, the Telegraph, New Statesman, ID, the Guardian, and Dazed. Her first book, Notes on Heartbreak, was published in 2022, but I believe the paperback version is coming out very soon as well this year.
Yeah.
So yes, without further ado. Do you think women kind of blame themselves more when a relationship goes wrong? Because it
Mm.
definitely felt like that.
Yeah, I think so. I suppose we've got more of the tools to do kind of, we're a bit more emotionally intelligent a lot of the time. And I think therefore we get given the tools to look at our behaviors and where they, where they come from and where we went wrong and all that stuff. And um, I don't know. I definitely notice like a lot of guy friends when they have breakups, they seem to just kind of bounce back really quickly. But because they don't do that same processing, it takes a long time. They actually end up taking a lot longer to feel okay again. Um, Whereas women, I think you feel really bad initially, and then they sort of work through that quite quickly in a few months.
Yeah, I mean, it felt like you were processing so much more.
Mm.
Throughout the book, the whole book felt like a process in itself, a quite cathartic process. And so, do you think how much of our sort of memory and heartbreak can also become warped or changes from actual reality?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that was like one thing that I struggled with a lot when the breakup happened was the idea that in order to move on, it sounds like you need to forget what you both shared. And that really upset me because I
Mm,
hate that idea that, those years you spent together might end up being a waste.
mm,
But obviously I want to feel better, but it just felt part of feeling better is forgetting that person. Um, but as it went on, like I think I realized you don't necessarily have to forget. You can
mm.
know that you spent that time together and it was beautiful and worth something.
Mm.
But just not dwell in it. I don't know. Like now, I mean, I quite like dwelling in my feelings. So like I'll walk around somewhere that we used to walk around together and get a big stab of pain, but I quite enjoy it. It's like picking a scab or something. Like I
Mm.
quite like being soppy about stuff and like being a
Yeah.
bit Lana Del Rey about everything, being a sad girl.
Well, at the end, it just felt like a real sort of emotional growth.
Mm,
Even though exactly there was a real maturity about it. When you moved forward, like you don't forget the other person, you just learn as you both learn and grow essentially. But throughout the process, I know you definitely there seemed elements of sort of grief, and it really believed like I remember like the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and so, how much of heartbreak is a sort of form of bereavement, do you think?
yeah, loads. I mean, it's you're losing that person, and it's almost got a different dimension of pain, in that you have to get your head around the fact that they're living their life without you in it, and that's almost its own unique pain because it's like, how dare you not let me be a part of that? And the thought that they're doing things and you don't know about them and talking to people and growing is so painful because you're just so used to doing everything with that person. Um, I think the thing is, it just, yeah, they are very similar. And I think what I found initially was I found it very painful that it hurts so much, but it's not really taken as seriously as it feels like it hurts. Like I remember as soon as the
Mm.
breakup happened, sort of looking around me and thinking, is this what everyone was talking about the whole time? Like this is how bad it hurts because you hear about people being heartbroken all the time. It's something that most people go through, and I just couldn't believe that it would be this bad.
Mm.
I think almost as a society, we don't take it as seriously as we should because
Yeah.
it feels like something's been wrenched out of you. It's so horrible.
Yeah, there's like an actual biological sort of aspect of it from what I've
Mm.
heard. You know, heartbreak can actually cause some level of sort of a heart attack. And you know, and so do you think, especially it happens a lot for, you know, especially women, women, non-binary people. So why do you think like everything else is prioritized over women's anger?
Oh wow. I guess it's just not when we're grown up. Like it's just not seems an emotion that we can access or should access. Like we're more taught to be caring and make everyone else feel comfortable. And I think it just when something does happen that you should be angry about, you just second guess it and are more likely to. I don't know. I think I've always been taught, the way we win is to just kind of disappear and be aloof, and then they'll miss us so much that they'll want to come back. And that if you express any anger, you'll sort of put them off you or you'll be crazy. And um, I think it was quite liberating at certain points, just thinking, no, I feel angry and I'm going to be true to myself and how I'm feeling and show that anger rather than being all sweet and like, oh, if I'm perfect, he'll come running back and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I have to ask, even just what is your relationship with it now? You know, just you know, with your ex partner. Like, do you still have a good relationship, or do you still
Yeah,
talk?
we used to get on. I mean, I don't want to talk for him, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, we get on and stuff. Um, but we don't. I mean, we're exes, so I guess quite a typical ex relationship in that we sort of see each other rarely and that kind of thing.
Mm. Yeah. No, well, it's amazing that you managed to sort of grow past that
Mm,
that initial hurt essentially. And so, you know, when I was reading the book, you know, I
mm,
was wondering like how much of a relationship is based on sort of changing yourself for the other person, or is that sort of a form of like low self-esteem, do you think?
mm. I think it depends on the relationship. I think it's natural in some ways that you do become more and more similar. Like even with my flatmates I live with now, I've noticed we just start using the same words and
Mm.
we'll go and think something at the same time or be like, oh yeah, let's go there. Or like, um, I just think you become a bit symbiotic with people when you spend time with them. And that's
Mm.
really nice. And I think sometimes at the minute with people talking about self-love a lot, it's almost like people are starting to think that it's bad to rely on someone in any way and that
Mm.
we're all these individuals that shouldn't need anyone else. And I think that's sad. I think we do need people, and your problems becoming their problems really helps. Like I even like it when friends start, I'll be upset about something and they go, oh, we'll sort it out, and use the word we, and
Mm.
it just makes you feel so much less alone with stuff. So I think in one sense it's good. I think you can also, it is difficult, especially when you're younger, when you're in a relationship like a serious one for the first time, to not just completely absorb each other. And it's such an intense love that I think it can feel so much more important than everything else, like your friends and family and work. And that's kind of fun in a lot of ways because it's super intense, but it's not something I'd
Mm.
want to do again. um, yeah, but yeah, I think if I fell in love again, like the things, I'd be a lot better at. I just think about myself more, and I put it in the book, but I just remember my mum saying something like, oh, when you fall in love the second time, you always keep something back. And I didn't
Mm.
really know what she meant by that. But I think I do. Like, it might not be something specific, like, oh, I'm not going to tell them this thing about myself, but just in general, you might not, you just keep a bit more of yourself secret, I think.
Mm. I think you're right. You know, it's sort of like being burnt, isn't it? So you
Mm.
just you want to make sure you don't sort of burn yourself again in a way.
Yeah.
You know, it is really tricky, but getting the balance right, I think, of how much you share with another person. Um, but you're also right. There is a sort of a stigma towards depending on other people now. It's sort of like we live in a very individualistic kind of you know society. So there seems to be some kind of like taboo now about being dependent on other people or
Mm.
asking for help.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, how much do you think of, you know, relationships are also based on kind of putting people on pedestals?
Um, I don't know. I definitely think I've got a bit of a problem with that. I think like I've always just been so obsessed with guys since I was younger. Like my mum found this picture the other day, and it was like I'd done this weird drawing of like my dream man. And it was like when I was like 3 or 4. And I think I've just
Oh.
always been a bit like that, where I just think the sun shines out their arse. But I think, yeah, it's hard. It's like, it's difficult, isn't it? Because friends can say to you like, "Oh, but you're great as well," and um, I do think I'm great, but
Mm,
um, sometimes you just, yeah, you just idolize other people. But um, I think as long as it's not giving you sort of imposter syndrome and making you feel negative about yourself, then it's kind of
mm,
fine. Um, but yeah, nowadays, like if I went out and meet men, I think there's something that's can be a bit dehumanizing if you do put people on that pedestal, because
mm,
they're not really allowed to be themselves because they're like an idol, and then it's like they can't be imperfect, and that's a bit exhausting in itself. So
mm.
um I don't think it yeah. I don't think it's very fun, even though it seems like it'd be nice for you to think someone's amazing. I think it can be annoying. So it is something I'm definitely working on.
Actually, has it happened the other way around before, where you felt like you were put on a pedestal?
um I think sometimes because of writing and stuff, people can be like, oh my god, like um I think because I don't come across as like the smartest person in the world, and I'm a bit ditzy and blonde, and sometimes I can meet people at parties and stuff, and I can tell they think I'm a bit stupid, and then they sort of find
Mm,
out I've written a book or like what I do, and then they're more interested in me. And it's weird because I really enjoy that feeling, but then you feel a bit icky after, like you sort of, it was a bit cheap and you've like cashed in on something.
mm.
Um, so yeah, in that way, I think I do.
Yeah, it's I understand, and it feels unfair that you can only be judged based on what you do rather than who
Mm,
you are.
yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah,
not the worst thing in the world. I quite like it, but it is like it's a bit fake, I guess. That's the only thing.
yeah, because it can be kind of precarious. Because suddenly, what happens when suddenly you're not doing that anymore? Does your
Yeah.
identity change? Like, are you going to still be respected?
Mm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of sort of unpicking to do even with that, isn't it? And I have to ask, like, what was like the biggest thing you learned from the experience of heartbreak?
Um, I think it's funny, like when I think about how, when you go through a breakup, everyone's like, "Oh, you don't need him, like you'll be fine." And it's so weird. Like now I look where my life is at, and I'm just trying to write another book, and I've got like a whole new
Mm,
group of friends, and I've got the column in Vogue that's doing really well, and all this stuff. And it's kind of weird, like when you look back, like none of that would have happened. And I don't necessarily think it's because he held me back in any way, but if I
mm,
think about like, I wrote We Broke Up, so I wrote an article about it, and the article went viral, and then I got an agent, and then I got a column in Vogue, and all this stuff like snowballed, and it's like
mm.
it's just so funny. So yeah, I guess so many things in that way. But also like a specific thing I think I learned was like, ooh, um, maybe, yeah, and I guess in that way it's a long way of saying I guess I realized how great I was. And it
Yeah.
just brought me a lot of self-esteem. Um, but I think if a specific lesson, um, I think there was maybe that, what was it my mum said that I really listened to? Oh, maybe that like, suffering isn't linear, and that
Mm,
you could feel like tomorrow something could happen that make me feel so raw and like I really miss him again. And you can sometimes feel like you're not making any progress, or like, oh, I can't believe I'm back here again. But
mm.
actually, it's like it's not a straight line. Like
No.
it's like and then you go right back, and that's fine. And that's
Yeah.
always been part of the journey of it. It's not a backwards. You were always going to feel that bad at that point. And if you feel that bad at that point, tomorrow you might feel way better. Or something I tell other people that are just going through breakups, like, so many people are like, oh, you're going to feel so sad for um, months and months and months. And it is true. But, you some of the days that I had really soon after we broke up were like really, really happy.
Mm.
It's not like the whole thing is bad. You could
Mm.
have a really great day tomorrow and a really funny night out, and you end up in really silly situations because you're kind of putting yourself out there and you're so ready for the world. And it's almost quite a fun time in a lot of ways.
So would you say there's I remember in Sex and the City there was like an equivalent calculation or a formula, isn't it,
Mm.
of like how long you've been going out for and how long it takes to get over or at least move through the process. Do you think there's a little bit of truth in that at all?
Yeah, isn't it like they say it takes half the length of the relationship to get
I
over it?
think so.
Um, yeah, I think there is because I think a lot of it is just to do with time. Like there isn't really much advice you can take or do other than the obvious like cut off contact with them and don't look at anything online. I think those are the only main ones that really speed it up. But at the same
Mm.
time, I think it's quite rare that people are able to do that really clean break. Um, I definitely couldn't, but um, and also there's so many things you don't realize are wrong, but they can actually help. Like I definitely found like sleeping with him or like weirdly help, even though that was meant to be like the worst thing you possibly do, but it sort of helped me to see that he still loved me and it wasn't about that. And that really gave me a lot of closure. Um,
Mm.
so there's not really a right or wrong thing. It's just waiting out until it stops hurting and your body basically just gets used to the feeling of moving through the world without that person. I think it's something C.S. Lewis says where he's like, um, what is it? It's like grief is the suspension of habit or something. And he kind of
Mm.
talks about how, when you're grieving, you're just constantly walking in a room expecting them to be in there and they're not. And
Yeah.
it's almost like you just have to stop having that feeling and expecting them around and you just stop missing them and you start to feel better. Um, and you just have to kind of wait.
Yeah, I'm like in that way it is like a bereavement, isn't it?
Mm,
Because it's the life you thought you would have
mm,
with them, isn't it? But
mm,
there you are. You're like, again, it's like it spurred you onto a different path, isn't it?
mm.
Which is a really strange thing. And absolutely. So, gotta ask, given that given a little hint, which is what's the next book going to be
Oh,
about? Is it,
I can't say
moving
yet because
past
it's super
heartbreak?
early, but I want to write fiction at the minute. Um,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
On the same theme or on maybe
Yeah,
something you
defo
write about, dating and things like that?
yeah, definitely love rom-com, sort of a rom-com turned on its head vibes is what I'm working with in the minute. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I think that would do really well. There's a very, very big, excited community that I'm sure will follow your previous book to this one. So
Mm.
that's excellent. So Annie, thank you so much for joining me. It's been
Oh,
an
thank you for
absolute
having
pleasure.
me.
It's been so interesting just to get to know you and also read your book, of course. It's really fascinating. So I really appreciate you sharing yourself with the world like that.
Oh, thank you.